Welcome everyone to the November Focus Series. Today we're going to focus on just reviewing the year that we've had and looking at all the features that were launched in 2025, but most importantly, highlighting and celebrating the meaningful conversations that they enabled. Now, if we think back on 2025, the product development team kept us rather busy with a lot of new features that we added this year. And for each of them, we went through, a focus series where we talked about how to use the feature and most importantly, how it can enable meaningful conversation. So I'm not going to go into the detail of each one today, but rather focus on how planners in the Asset Map community are using each of these different features. So how it's being used in practice. And we know that the goal is to have more of these meaningful conversations with clients throughout the journey and have it with more clients more of the time. But the challenge is we're all pressed for time. So I'm also going to spend a bit of time on how you can scale these conversations, but in a personalized way. So what are some of the ways that you can use the features, reuse them, but in a way that creates the space for personalized conversation with clients? And then lastly, sorry.
And Kirsty, if I can just say that for the audience, is we were at the FBI conference, what was it, 2 weeks ago, and this theme came through so strongly. Everybody goes like, I get it. We need to do soft skills, and I'm really good at doing so. Like most of the people there say, listen, my soft skills are quite good. The problem is scaling it. So I don't think people have made that jump yet to say it's not about having soft skills, it's about scaling it in your process. So I'm looking forward to that section, Kirsty.
Hearing that. And then also I'm going to share client stories that you in the community have shared with us about the impact some of these conversations are having on clients. So without further ado, let's get started. So one of the features that was added this year is Stencil Library. Now we've always had the ability to create stencils and apply them to clients, but this year we added a library of stencils specifically for South African clients. And you can use those stencils straight from the library, but you can also copy them from the library into your personal stencil library, where you can then edit those stencils, make them your own, and personalize them. And we're seeing some great use of this within the community. So in practice, planners are using Stencil Library to create households, firstly. So, by applying the stencil to a new household, and that does a couple of things. Firstly, it makes capturing quicker. All the blocks are there and you're personalizing it. But it's also a great way of identifying gaps and opportunities with the clients and just getting the client more engaged. They're sharing more, they're adding more to their map. But we've also seen some other interesting uses of how we're grouping these different features together. For example, planners are sending the discovery link to clients. Clients are then obviously completing who's important to them, their assets, liabilities, incomes, what's top of mind for them, and that's then creating the map. At that point, planners are applying the stencil from Stencil Library and then sharing the client portal link with the client to say, thank you for filling in that information. Added a few additional questions or thoughts that I'd like you to work through. Please, would you log on to the client portal, work through that and fill in that additional information. So that's just a really interesting way of seeing that. From a scaling point of view, I really encourage creating your own personalized stencils from the stencil library. So copying it across and making it your own, adding in additional questions that you want to ask or financial blocks that you want to focus on, updating the wording to really speak to your practice, and also adding in notes. So we've seen this used so well where planners are adding in notes in their stencil, but also including links to more information, whether that's a website that details a bit more education about something, or quick calcs that they've rerouted it to. But the idea is that you can really personalize your stencil, add in all the blocks that you want, put in notes, add links for more information. We have one planner who's using this really successfully where he's created sort of a master stencil and he's put in links to more education or, sites that detail the specifics about a certain thing. And he uses the stencil as almost a master journey that the client is going to go on. And that at any point in time, he knows all of those notes are in the reports and the client can access more information as and when they need. And then just to share a client story on this, a planner shared with us recently, and this planner had been in the profession for a long time, but just started, working directly with clients. And he has a client, she's about 70 years old and unfortunately gone through quite a hard time recently, deaths in the family, and just feeling really overwhelmed with all of her finances, not really financially astute, but just finding everything quite overwhelming. And the planner went to see her, created a map, applied a stencil, and he said so much more came out of that conversation than what he was anticipating. Not only, multiple bank accounts that he didn't know about, but even a loan with her son that really opened up a, extraordinary conversation around not only opportunities, but also estate planning conversations. And we hear this time and time again. There's something about seeing that block R1 on that clients tend to share more. It opens up conversation and really highlights opportunities and risks. The next addition I want to talk through is legal. So we added the ability to add legal documents, or at least the pertinent details of legal documents, directly into Asset Map. Now, previously we would have, had a block on the page to sort of highlight that conversation and talk a little bit about the connection between the two. But this now gives you the ability to log legal contracts that the client has and the specifics around that. And how it's being used in practice is planners are just recording more of those contracts and having it all in one place. So the will obviously is a common example, but also adding things like marital contracts or marital regimes, adding last wishes report, shareholders agreement, trust deeds, and specifically where is it stored. So by adding in the notes, you can say it's, in the third drawer of our home office, or being quite precise about where these are stored. Another great way that planners are using this in practice is you can now select for the will to be added as a beneficiary. And what that means is that if some sort of an investment or risk product is going to be dealt with in terms of the will, you can actually select the will as a beneficiary, and it's going to show up on the beneficiary reports under a will column. So that's just another great addition with legal contracts. But also linking it to relationship maps. And I'll talk a little bit about relationship maps now, but you can now create a relationship map and actually add those legal contracts on there. And from a scaling point of view, one thing I would talk through here is adding this to your personalized stencils. So we added an insurance type called Other, and that gives you the ability to add a block on the map without a value. So no more floating R1 on the wall or on medical. So we're super excited about that. But what that means is you can add these blocks to your stencil to highlight the conversation. Once you've had the conversation with the client about, is the will in place? Is it up to date? Do we need to make any changes? Then you can record that under the legal section and the pertinent details. And then you can always take the block away. But it's a great way of opening up that conversation. And the feedback we've got from planners and from their clients is they just really love seeing all of it together, knowing that there's the medical, there's the gap cover, there's my will, there's this contract and where it is, and they know that their loved ones can also see where everything is and have a view of that. So there's just some comfort that comes from having it all in one place. So please add it to your stencils, open up that conversation, record it under legal, and of course link it to beneficiaries. Then we move into relationship maps. And I just love, working through this presentation, how all of these connect with each other and how that connection opens up even more uses and ways in which you can scale it. But relationship maps, if we think about Asset Map, that shows us all the members in a household, all of their entities, but from a financial point of view, what sits where. Relationship maps lets us take the people and entities to the next level by showing how they all fit together. Really answering that question of, who are all the people that are important to the client? How are they connected? How are the individuals connected to the trust, to the company, showing those structures? And we're seeing it used exactly in that way. So planners are using it to create family trees, just to show and be on the same page with how all the individuals in the household are connected, but also to highlight and surface structure conversations. how the individual's connected to the trust, how the individual's connected to the business, who are the other shareholders, who are the trustees, beneficiaries, etc. And we also added a default relationship map this year. So that means that as soon as you created an asset map for a client, added all the members, you can immediately go into relationship map and the map will be started for you already. So it'll show the primary client, the spouse, parents, grandparents, grandchildren, and children in that family tree structure. From there, you can add, edit, add text notes, link individuals to each other, link them to businesses and trusts, and use the notes and text boxes to color that in. And the story I want to share here is we had a planner and she had a client who had lots of these types of structures. So perfect client for relationship maps, lots of businesses, lots of trusts. The client also had, multiple business partners and different shareholders. And the planner was also dealing with the accountant. And the accountant sent her a whole lot of, documents and detail. And the planner thought, I'm going to create a relationship map for this conversation with the client and the accountant to work through it and ensure I'm understanding the structure correctly. And by putting that together and sharing it with the client, it actually came out that the structure was not how they all understood it. And there were many things that needed to change, and there was a lot of confusion. But it was just really a great example of how the planner can bring it all together, especially if there's multiple role players. You're dealing with an attorney, an accountant, a tax specialist. Be the one to bring it all together in a visual and make sure everyone is on the same page. And obviously from there, we can build plans and changes. Sidebar. So this is an exciting addition, and it started off, about being when we are adding a member to a household or editing something for a member or financial. Remember, it used to pop up and sort of block the map. And the thinking behind Sidebar is that more and more planners are engaging clients remotely or online, and also projecting it to a screen if you are sitting face to face. And just like going through a report that's 40 pages long overwhelms the client and is distracting, so is jumping around. And Sidebar gives us the ability to keep it on one screen. So to have the map always there, always visible, but in the sidebar, I can update a member, add a member, change a financial, add in a note, and then the addition of including target maps and signals in Sidebar. And that addition has been just amazing for this idea around one screen planning. We know that clients always want to know, where am I today? How on track am I? And what are the things I can do to move forward? And this gives us the ability to have that full conversation on one screen sitting in front of the client, where I can change financials if I need to, update members if I need to, whilst not blocking the map. So keeping the focus on the map and where the client is today. And also, in addition, this little eye that you can click on a signal or target map. And what that does is just gray out the map but highlight which financials are being used in each of those target maps, or to calculate the red and the green on the signal. And I think that is such a great addition in that it just really makes it tangible for a client and connects their asset map with their target map, or their financials with their plan. So these are this product that I have, or this investment that I have, this is how it's being used to move me forward. And I can click on that little eye and reflect that for the client. So just making it, again, really tangible.
If I can just add the other one that's there that is not often, I see advisors don't notice it, is where you've got a lot of scenarios. You can specify, we call it targets. So you can say which are the active target maps, and then you can click on that button. We call it the target button. It'll only list the active target map and not all the scenarios. So that's just a useful thing, because sometimes it can get really confusing with all the different scenarios.
That long list of scenarios. Yeah, that's a great point, Benny. Just being able to filter that by, this is the list of scenarios, but these are the ones that we're targeting or focusing on today. So great point. And then also I want to point out the updating of notes. So if you're in Asset Map and you select a member or a financial, and you click on that notes tab on the right, as you move to other financials or other members, it'll keep opening on the notes tab on the right. And that's a great way of, while you're engaging the client, just filling in those notes in that conversation around, what's important, what action steps we're taking, what the focus of that is, and filling it in the meeting while you're working through it. Now, from a client story point of view, planners have shared how, using asset map and target maps with the sidebar in this one-screen planning just makes that process a lot more efficient and effective. And that clients are just relating to it more, seeing this is where I am, this is how on track I am, being able to see that one page and just leaving with that sense of comfort. So I think this is a great way of being able to scale and have that meaningful conversation with more clients. It's about just practicing and working through, showing it in this way in that sidebar and working through that conversation with the clients. All right. Then milestones and reporting. So this was maybe a slightly smaller enhancement, but I think a really powerful one in the flexibility we have in reporting. So what we added this year is in reports now records all report history. So you don't, once you've generated a report in asset map, any report, whether it's the asset map by itself, the consolidated report, beneficiary report, it automatically records all those reports under report history. And milestones gives us the ability to date stamp something that I'm doing in asset map, so an engagement. And the reason I want to talk about these two together is I think they can be used quite effectively by linking them together. One of the ways of doing that is, let's say I'm doing a review today on November 20th with a client. I can go in and create the milestone to say I'm doing a review. It date stamps it as last review was 20th of November 2025. It means that in a few months' time, when I'm looking back, I can see exactly when I updated the map and had that review conversation with the client. But because of report history, I can also see what report was generated that day and that was the review report that we shared with the client. So you can see how the two can link together. The dates I did the review, I milestone it to stamp that date in, but also I could view the corresponding report. In addition to saving the report history, you can also now change the order of reports. So you could have, I want the notes first, and then the asset map, and then the balance sheet, and then target map. So whatever order you prefer, and you can save those orders as report layouts and this is a great way, again, for that scaling personalization, is building these report layout templates in your asset map to say, for new clients, this is the order of the report, and tick what we include. And then you can have a review report where it could be a different order or different chapters in that review report. And you can save a few, as many of those as you need. And then it also creates, sort of uniform across the practice around, this is the new report, this is the review report, but allows for that scaling. That you're not selecting each time, ticking each time, moving it around each time. So that's something to explore. And just in terms of using it in practice and
Kirsty,
client stories. Yeah, sorry.
just Casper is saying, just hit that play on that video again. Just, but you be
sure,
on,
no
but
problem.
just play it again.
Okay, want to see it again. Perfect, no problem. Okay, so while that's playing, just to share, in addition to building report templates and viewing report history, you can also share reports directly to the client portal. So let's say, and it's not automatic that all the reports you generate are shared, but you can select, okay, this is the actual review report, this is the one I want to share with the client, and you can share that under report history directly to the client portal. And that's great for clients as well, to be able to access the portal and see, these are all my reports. There's my one from 2024, here's my review report from 2025, and maybe then from 2026 onwards. So just to recap on that, use the milestones to indicate a date that you're doing something in the household. Then you've got the reports to see the corresponding dates on the reports of what report went out at that point, and start sharing it to the client portal. So the clients also have access to that progression over time. Where was I 2 years ago, a year ago, today? Right, I'll set the video. There we go. Timing. Okay, and then priorities. So this was one of our recent enhancements and recent focus series. And this gives you the ability to uncover different priorities or goals that the client has and to reflect that to them, as well as to assign importance to those goals. And this, we're getting a lot of feedback on how well these conversations are going with clients, in that planners are uncovering priorities that they maybe weren't aware of, or just wording it differently to really resonate with the client. But most importantly, reflecting back, making it really real for clients. And an example of that is, prior to review, going in and putting in the priorities that you believe this client is trying to achieve, and then reflecting that to them as part of the review conversation. So this is my understanding of the priorities that we have and that we're working towards, and then just having that conversation with the client around, are these still the priorities? Have they changed? Is there something new that we need to add in? What sort of importance or order would you give these priorities? What is the top one for you? And we've had some really special client stories, and the one I want to share today is a planner shared with us that he went to go see a client, an existing client of theirs. It's a couple, elderly couple, and in that family, the husband is more the one who is financially astute, or managing the finances, and he's been investing for many years, and it's all paper based, and he's got it all over the house. And he went into that meeting and reflected the priorities to the clients as wanting to ensure that in the event of death, that the spouse had enough financially to support the income that she needs. But upon reflecting that to the client actually shared a fear, which is often where priorities or goals come from, it as well as underlying that is a fear. But the client said, actually, my fear is less that she has enough income, I think there's enough investment, but more that she won't know where they are, that there's a lot of them, there's paper everywhere. My real fear is that transition. And that was such a inspiring conversation to say, it might seem similar, but the two are actually distinct, and wanting to be okay, but also knowing that that transition can happen seamlessly and in a way that his spouse feels supportive and comfortable with it. So of course they created the asset map, documented, I think there was actually some photos of everything, put it all together so that the client and the spouse, being part of that engagement, had a good understanding. And the client could feel that, that should something happen, that transition would be seamless. Yeah. I love that. I love that story. And then client portal. So this was actually launched in 2024. But then this year we added the ability for clients to make suggestions, to tell us what's changed in their life. And that's really been a bit of a game changer in terms of how planners are using that with clients and what they're sharing to the client portal. So in practice, what this gives us the ability to do is to engage prior to the review, to say to the client, go in on client portal, have a look at your map, let us know what's changed in your life, whether that's my income is different, my property value, the loans that I have is different, update all the things that we maybe don't have that information for. And then just being able to share, collaborate, and engage securely with clients, giving them the ability to make changes, but also the ability to share reports with clients, to share other information, and changing that over time. So remember, with Client Portal, you have full control of what a client sees and when, and how much they can see and what they can do on that client portal. Also, another key point is that any changes that the client makes or suggests will not change the map automatically. You still have to accept the change, or of course you can reject the change. So you still control that entire process. But from a scaling point of view, I'd really encourage you to set up your different permission sets. So maybe for a new client, I just want them to see the map and be able to add and edit so that we can collaborate around data gathering. Maybe for a review client, I want them to see the map as well as reporting and maybe some of the other features along the side. So you can create these different permission sets and assign them to clients when giving them client portal access. And you can, of course, change it over time. So you can shift that permission and let clients see or do different things depending on where they're at in the journey. And we have just a great client story that was shared with us on Client Portal, where it was the first client that a planner gave access to, and probably because he knew this client would really enjoy that process. But the client actually sent him a voice note, and he said 3 things on there. The first thing he said was, "Thank you for investing in this for your clients. I really appreciate it." And then secondly, he said, "I just love this. It's fun, and I love adding and editing and being able to engage with it." But probably thirdly, or also importantly, the client said, "Going through it raised something for me, and I want to have a conversation with you about ABC." So you can see how by sharing access to the client, not only do they start, they really enjoy it and find it fun and visual and engaging, but they also, it starts surfacing things for the client that they can then share with you, and you can have that conversation with them as well. Yeah. So before we close out for today, I just wanted to say a big thank you. Thank you for, joining us on this focus series journey this year, for coming to the sessions, for engaging, and mostly for sharing your stories, and how these conversations are impacting clients. We love hearing them. It really is motivating and so inspiring for us. So please continue to share those. We will be continuing the focus series in 2026. We'd love your input. What worked well? What do you want to see more of? So please share all of that with us. But we will be continuing in 2026. This is our last one for 2025, but we'll see you all again in January 2026. We'll have the first one for the new year. And then lastly, just a quick what to expect from 2026. So the development team is still hard at work in adding and enhancing Asset Map, but I want to talk about 2 sort of themes that you can expect or think about for next year. And the first theme that we're focusing on is really what we spoke about with Sidebar today. When you're sitting in front of the client and you're engaging on the screen or on a presenting, how do we make those conversations visual, more engaging, more empowering for clients, easy for you to navigate? So you'll start seeing development in that theme, things like bringing priorities into the sidebar, so you're not jumping around from screen to screen, bringing drafts into that, just making it really easy and simple and visual for clients to engage and feel empowered to move forward. So that's the one theme you can expect. And then the other theme is we've added a lot in 2025, but next year it's about just taking it up a level. So how do we make usability even more enhanced? How do we, bring in things like relationship maps into reporting, bring more into client portal? So you'll see a lot of developments around that. But as always, we'll keep you updated. We'll have the focus series, so please continue to join them. Please continue to share your stories and how you're using it and how clients are being impacted. Thank you.